like people are finding us. So I'm glad that you've found the link in your email. Welcome. This is Laudato Si and the U.S. Catholic Church workshop on preaching for creation care. If you have just joined us, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat box. We will ask that you stay muted until we have some time for interaction. It'll keep some of the background noise out. We have, I think, an excellent workshop coming up for you. Before I introduce or allow himself to introduce Father Mike Connors from Notre Dame, just a couple of housekeeping items. So again, if you've just joined us, please keep your sound muted so that we can keep the background noise at a minimum. As we proceed, Father Mike and other speakers will ask for your questions. At that point, you can either type your questions into the chat box or raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you and ask you to unmute yourself. But again, I encourage you to introduce yourself now in the chat box. So we've got quite a good turnout. There's a couple of more housekeeping items that we want to go over, and I'm going to turn that over to my colleague here at Catholic Climate Covenant, Anna Robertson, and she'll go through some of those housekeeping items as well.
All right, I'm just getting this into a little bit easier for you to see here. Sorry about this. Okay, great. Dan, Misleh, could I get a nod or a thumbs up that you can see that screen? Okay, wonderful. I think it might be in full presenter view, but that's okay. I'm just going to really briefly share how to access translation as well as subtitles. So, and I'm going to actually explain the translation part in Spanish because the people who might be needing Spanish can't actually hear the interpreters until they do this. Pues si lo que quieres hacer para escuchar la traducción en español, puedes hacer clic, como dice en la pantalla, en el globo, y de ahí vas a tener la opción de seleccionar español o Spanish para escuchar los traductores. So I just explained in Spanish how to do that. Also, we'd ask any Spanish speakers, we'll have a time where we'll have breakout rooms specifically, and we'll have a special breakout room for Spanish speakers so you can talk to each other. So in order to be placed in that breakout room, if you're a Spanish speaker, please take a moment to change your name in Zoom and add an ES at the beginning of it. So to do that, you can just follow these instructions on the screen here. Find the participant list, find your name, and change it to putting an ES in front of it. And if you have trouble with that at the breakout sessions, you can just stay back in the main room and I'll make sure to get you into the breakout session that you need. And then finally, for everyone else, if you would like English, English subtitles, live transcripts, you can turn that on by clicking the live transcript CC button at the bottom and click show subtitle. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anna. We have a really, I think, amazing workshop that's going to transpire in the next hour and 45 minutes. I want to introduce Father Mike Connors from the University of Notre Dame, who has led this effort. I'll let him introduce his committee, but they have been working diligently for the past several months to put this workshop together and help us as a Catholic community, help you and help others to figure out how do we encourage our pastors to preach about this Laudato Si, this environmental justice, creation care. How do we help them do that better? So we are delighted that we have, looks like about 100 people in this workshop. So that's terrific. So let me turn this now over to Father Mike, and Father Mike, it's all yours.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to share my screen. Is that coming through?
Oh, no, that's all right.
Okay.
Yes, it's coming through. We can see
Coming
it.
through? Okay, and you can hear me all right?
Mhm.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dan, very much. So good afternoon or good morning if you're in the Mountain Time Zone or the Pacific Time Zone. Nice to be with you today. As Dan said, my name is Mike Connors. I'm a Holy Cross priest and I direct the John S. Martin program in homiletics and liturgics at the University of Notre Dame. Among other things, that involves teaching, preaching to MDiv students here. It's a pleasure being with you today. I'm going to introduce some more people in just a second. But first, we are going to pray. Now, I realize the letters on this screen are quite small, so I apologize if you can't see it, but if you can, perhaps you'd like to just pray along. God said, I have set signs of the covenant between me and you and every living creature. Genesis 9:9. We are called to rebuild the covenant, to repent for our neglect, and to receive from God the joy of caring for creation and caring for the poor. We are called to pray, to discern the Creator within creation, to confess our debt to the poor, to ask for the mercy of Christ. We are called to act, to teach others the truths within creation, to dismantle the burdens placed on the poor, to transform our lifestyles into an image of Christ. We are called to advocate, to uplift in the public square the cries of creation, to make known to others the agonies of the poor, to be a witness to the gift freely given of God. St. Francis, teach us now to see in all things a sacrament, the marriage of heaven and earth. Mary, Mother of Creation, inspire us now to care as you once cared for your child. God, Creator, gift giver, equip us now to pray, to act, and to advocate to solve climate change. For by your mighty power, you created all things out of nothing, and in your loving care, you joined us all together. May we transform our life in the light of this truth. Amen. Well, again, welcome everyone. Just as we're kind of still gathering a few more people, we mentioned three quick things that I've already put in the chat. Now that we've had all the introductions, you will have to scroll back to the top of the chat to see these if you want to copy them there. I wanted to mention, first of all, that just a couple of weeks ago, we had an event that the Martin program sponsored, which was a panel presentation on the topic of preaching and Laudato Si. There were four members of the panel, Father Dan Horan from Catholic Theological Union, Professor John Holbert, who's a retired emeritus professor of homiletics at Southern Methodist University, Suzanne Nawrocki, who's with us today, and myself. The link that's on the screen here will lead you to the video of that presentation, which I think many of you would really find of interest. It will also lead you to another webinar that occurred the following day by Father Scott Dedish, but just to bring that to your attention. I put my email address here for reasons I will explain a little bit later as we go along. I'm going to be asking the group leaders, the breakout group leaders, to be in contact with me after the session is over. And finally, I've been trying to compile a list of resources. Now, some of you have sent me things over the last few days, which I've added. I don't think I've gotten to all of them. However, if there are additional things that you would like to see added to this list, you can certainly email me at any time or put them in the chat. the full link was too long for this PowerPoint slide, but on the beginning of the chat where I posted that first message, you'll find the link to that Google Drive document if you'd like to take a look at it. Let me introduce a few people to you. When Dan Misleh asked me, I guess it was last fall sometime, whether I would spearhead this group, I readily agreed, of course, because this is something I care about. And the first thing that I did was ask some of my colleagues in the Homiletics Guild to join me in this, in beginning to think about this. So I reached out to a few people, and they're not all able to be with us today, but as I read your name, if you're here and you'd like to just say something, introduce yourself further, feel free. Carla Bellinger. Don't think Carla is with us today. Carla was the Associate Director of the Martin Program here at Notre Dame. Guerric DeBona, Professor of Homiletics at St. Meinrad and a monk of St. Meinrad. Guerric, I know you're here today.
Yep, here I am.
Father Ray John Merrick, OMI. I don't think Ray John is with us. Ray John is the current president of CATH, the Catholic Association of Teachers of Homiletics. And he's in Oakland. Suzanne Nawrocki.
Good morning.
There's Suzanne, Adjunct Professor of Homiletics at the Aquinas Institute in St. Louis. Sister Honora Werner, OP. Honora, I don't think is with us. So the six of us are all members of CATH, and later on we added a few other people. Father Bob Bono from the Association of U.S. Catholic Priests. Bob, I think you're here.
I am. I'm sorry I can't be seen, but I can see.
Wonderful. Robert Gillespie of San Diego, are you here? And
thank you, Father. It's a pleasure to be here.
greetings. And finally, Michael Wright. I don't know if Michael's with us. Michael coordinates the homily helps for the Catholic Climate Covenant, and we're grateful for his work on that. So the 8 of us or so have been holding conversations since the beginning of January. We've had a series of, I believe, 8 Zoom conversations. I would say that our conversations have been wide-ranging, rich, diverse, and sometimes frustrating. The frustration, I think, is that we're trying to put our arms around something that is, I think, difficult. Namely, how can we raise up creation care more powerfully for the Catholic community? I don't think that's an easy question. I think we all share the conviction that preaching of various kinds can and should play a role in that project. But exactly how to do that is the question that we've been wrestling with. I'm going to share with you today some of the fruits of our discussions under 2 headings, the 2, what I've called 2 strategies. Now, the word strategy here is perhaps a bit overblown, because when you think of a strategy, you usually think of something much more concrete and definite. This is kind of a loose use of the word strategy, but it was the way we decided to sort of share with you some of the fruits of our conversations under these 2 headings. So the way this is going to work basically then is this. I'm going to introduce the first strategy and be brief, and then we will move to breakout groups where we'll have 15 to 20 minutes for some discussion. And then we'll come back again for some reporting. Now, given the number of people, which is far greater than we originally thought it would be, we're not going to have time to have all the groups report. But here's where I would invite your help. We'll have time for a few of the groups to report. But when you go into your groups, I'm going to ask you, first of all, to choose a secretary who would just keep some brief notes on your conversation, need not be long. And then if you want to get in on the part of the hour or actually about 45 minutes for each strategy, you want to get in and report orally, that's fine. Or if you'd like to just send me your notes on your discussion, that would be fine. Actually, I would ask you to send me your written notes regardless of whether you get to report orally or not. So again, when you go into groups, please choose a secretary who would just take some brief notes, and eventually we're going to collate these. Either I will do this, or Dan or a member of his staff will collate these in some way, and then we'll share them with you after today's event. So we'll have 40 minutes or so for each of the two broad strategies, and then at the end we should have, if I'm able to keep us on track on time, we should have about 15 minutes or so for open forum for others to add any thoughts that they would like to. So I hope that's clear enough. Members of the team, I'm going to stop after my little summaries just to give you a chance to add, amplify, clarify anything that I've said, and then we'll move into the breakout groups. So once again, broadly, our theme for this session is this: how can we foster attention to Laudato Si? And more importantly, I would say attention to creation care in Catholic preaching. In our discussions, and also last night I heard this, many people have said, well, I haven't heard about Laudato Si. My pastor never talks about it. And I think that that's quite common. We're trying to wrestle with how we can at least begin to overcome that, right? And how can the document be a resource for us in preaching? I think all of us in the group are quite convinced that it can be. Exactly how that might work would be something that we want to begin to tease out and wrestle with just a bit during our time together. So I hope that our overall project is clear enough. I did send you some questions in advance. I think that probably reached most of you, so perhaps you've been gathering some thoughts already. I'm going to move on then to our first broad strategy. And it kind of came out like this: foster retreats and other sorts of outdoor creation-focused experiences for priests, deacons, and lay ecclesial ministers, with special attention to preaching. For the faithful of all walks of life, foster similar experiences in which a spirituality of creation is cultivated. Members of the team all agreed that the larger goal here, again, is to nurture in the church a spirituality of creation which manifests itself in care for creation. A spirituality of creation which manifests itself in care for creation. As we conversed, all of us recognized that there is an experiential basis for this process. In fact, at one point, we took some time just to share our own experiences among us. Where did this interest in creation, the environment, ending pollution, where did this begin for us? And we shared all sorts of things. For me, for example, it had something to do with Boy Scouts. And I'm old enough to have been around for the first Earth Day. I was really into it. But the important thing here is to identify that for most of us, I think, this care, this concern arises from something that we've experienced that's actually very important to us. We've grown into a spirituality of creation by being exposed to experiences in which we learn to enjoy the outdoors and to appreciate creation's beauty, solitude, diversity, and ecological interconnectedness. Now today, in addition to those things, we can also see, if we have eyes to see and want to see, we can also see environmental degradation and its effects on many species and upon the poor and the marginalized. Meanwhile, more than ever before, modern technologies tend to keep many people indoors. We are comfortably warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Much of our attention is fastened on cell phones, computers, televisions, and so on. cultivation of a renewed sense of the divine presence in creation will then require intentional immersion in the biological world around us, together with the support and guidance of other members of the faith community. Preachers will not be able to lead the faithful into awareness of the holy in creation unless they themselves have experienced God there. So we need to find ways in which we can bring preachers apart from their daily routines for a time to reflect more deeply on the reality and meaning of the natural world and our connection with it. And at the same time, I think it goes hand in hand with the need to construct analogous kinds of experiences for our listeners, so that the preached word of revelation, God's revealing God's self in creation, is corroborated by experience and personal reflection. How can we do this? Well, here are a few things that surfaced in our discussions, and these are just brief and suggestive. Perhaps the Martin program, together with others, could pioneer and sponsor a model for creation-focused retreats for preachers. I was surfing the other day and found that in the Protestant world, there are a few of these already, creation care retreats. Perhaps we should think about constructing something like that. That may go together with this suggestion, and that is that we encourage the bishops to appoint a sustainability or creation care clergy liaison. If they would do that, then perhaps we could gather those liaisons for a retreat experience, which could then be replicated, at least in part, in their home dioceses. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with working with the bishops. Dan Misleh has tons more than I do. I don't know how this suggestion would be received, but perhaps it's something worth at least considering. Thirdly, could we work, and I'll just add this, the word we that I'm using here is not always clear who that we is. It's kind of ambiguously meant to be all of us on this webinar today. Work with retreat houses, Catholic college and university campus ministries, Newman centers to construct and host creation-focused retreats. One of the things that surfaced in our discussions was that we have all noticed that young people are very interested in and supportive of this, very concerned about this, as well they should be. They're going to be inheriting a world with a lot more environmental problems than some of us older folks did. Could we capitalize on that in some way in some of these kinds of settings? And finally, what about encouraging and assisting dioceses and parishes in designing things like focused retreats, days of recollection, faith formation programs? Now, again, these are just brief and no more than suggestive. They're some of the things that surfaced in our conversations. You may well have thoughts on how to flesh those out or add to that list. Now, before I move on to our breakout groups, let me just invite any team members who'd like to get in here very briefly to add anything. Anyone want to clarify or add anything? You'll have to unmute yourself. All right. Then let's move into breakout groups. Here are the questions that we suggested for groups to mull a bit. We want to mine our own experience. First of all, what has been our experience of creation care, and how has that shaped our preaching? And reversing then to the listener, how do we understand the experience of our assemblies with regard to creation or creation care? What opportunities do we see to help them name the grace in creation? What are the challenges, the points of resistance? Now I'm looking at the clock. Okay, we want to try to be back from groups by 1:40. Sorry, that's Eastern time. That would be 12:40 Central time. Sorry, I'm in the Eastern time zone. So that would be about, looks like about 20 minutes or close to 20 minutes.
Great. Mike, before we assign people to breakout groups, just as a reminder, if you prefer to be in Spanish, you will not be going to a breakout room, and we can assign you just to the main, this same page that we're on now, and our Spanish translators will be here for you. Okay.
So that means if you need a Spanish room, please do not accept the breakout invitation. Just
There you go. Thank you, Anna.
Thanks.
Okay, I have 12:25 in the Central Time Zone. Let's say we will come back promptly. We will pull you back from groups at 12:45. Okay.
Great.
Those of you who are staying back because you want a Spanish speaking breakout room, can you please unmute yourself and let us know if that's the case, or put it in the chat. I think I'm still being translated, but si quieres estar en un grupo hispanohablante, si puedes decirlo en voz alta, o tal vez puedes ponerlo en el chat. Okay, I believe still being translated right now. Interpreters, please feel free to ignore invitations to join a breakout room. Those of you who are still here, I'm going to invite you to join a breakout room together. If you are not here because you want a Spanish speaking breakout room and you're just here because you walked away from your computer at breakout sessions, then no need to accept that. So give me just a moment to do that. Okay, it looks like I actually am not able to create an additional room. So we can just use this space to discuss the questions in Spanish. In order to do that though, if you could just unmute yourself, if you are here because you want a Spanish speaking breakout room. Y si no tienes la traducción activado, si quieres hablar en español durante este tiempo, si puedes decirme en voz alta y podemos hacerlo como grupo aquí. Okay, so it seems that the folks who are still here might be here because you went to lunch or you walked away from your computer and are not here because you wanted a Spanish speaking breakout room. So please, if that is not correct, just jump in and let us know. Otherwise, Dan and I might talk shop really briefly. So please interrupt us if you'd like to be in conversation. Okay. Hi, Rosemary. We just sent folks to breakout rooms, so I'm just going to send you to one as well. And we're just gonna be here talking shop for a moment till we pull people out of breakouts. So I'm gonna pause.
And Anna, you have that timed to
I
end
know.
breakouts?
The breakouts aren't gonna automatically close, but I'll close them at time.
Right. Okay.
And as people come in now, we'll just add them.
Okay. I just added Mark.
Yeah. Mark, we are in breakout rooms right now. So feel free to hop into a breakout room. You should have just gotten an invitation. Welcome. Dan, it seems that we hit our participant capacity for this,
Okay.
which is great because it means there's lots of people. I think that we had intended to upgrade that. So I'm going to try to fix that before the YYA session, but we're at max capacity. So
Okay,
FYI.
great. Okay.
That was my main talk shop thing that I wanted to let you know about.
Okay.
All right, welcome, Tony. Folks are in breakout rooms right now, so I'm just going to invite you to head over to a breakout room and jump into the conversation.
Anna, I'm wondering if people are being, there's a lot more people coming in. I'm wondering if would it be the case that because we have sent people to breakout rooms that we have room now to let people in, or?
I hope not. I mean, we could,
no, because that's going to be a mess when they come back. I will continue to let people in if you wanted to focus on.
Welcome to those of you who are just arriving. We are currently in breakout rooms. So I'm just going to send you and you can just jump in mid-conversation and join one of those conversations. And we'll be there for another 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, people are still.
I'm wondering if maybe people. Welcome, Lisa. Good to see a Seattle face here. We are currently in breakout rooms for another 10 minutes or so. So I'm just going to go ahead and invite you to join one.
Since I've missed everything, is there going to be more content or?
Yes, there will be more after the breakouts. And that the breakouts go for another 10 minutes or so.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Those who are in the main room here, Anna and I are doing a little bit of technical work. If you wanted to go into a breakout room, we can assign you one. Otherwise, keep yourself muted and enjoy our conversation.
Dan, I do wonder if folks are able to join because people are in breakout rooms. So
Yeah,
maybe starting now, just until we bring people back, let's just leave people in the waiting room for a few minutes and we can broadcast to them and we can say, we're in breakouts. We'll let you in when there's capacity.
So how many people do we have? Did you get the total?
Well, we have 7 obviously in this room, but I don't think I can see.
Yeah, it was when we had everybody together. I think the participant list was.
Mm-hmm.
I know we went over 100.
I'm just gonna text Kathy and ask her to upgrade.
I can, and she's here. I can ask her. Let me just ask her. I'm in the office.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we need to upgrade a large meet. We need to add a large meeting upgrade on Zoom.
Okay, she's checking.
I'm looking to see if I can find the article about it. Yeah. Large meetings add-on is what we need.
She's got the account open, so she's looking at it.
Optional add-ons, here we go. Large meeting add-on, monthly. I'll email it to her. Yeah, and if she can, I mean, if she can get that in the next few minutes, then it might save us this next stage.
Right. She'll let me know, I'm sure, when if she's got it.
Maybe starting now, if we can just hold off on admitting people until.
Okay.
Michael, welcome. We're in breakouts right now, so I'm just going to send you to a breakout room, and you can just be a fly on the wall and contribute a little bit. I know that you missed the content, but we'll be back shortly in this large room. And I'm in, yeah, I think Kathy should be able to do this really quickly.
Okay.
Like I could press buy right now, and I think
Okay.
I
Okay.
could do
Yeah. Let me see where she is with it. Okay, I think we have upgraded, but I don't know if it's going to take effect right now. I can't hear you. You're muted.
At least I'm expressive. Maybe you could figure out what I was saying. I said, I'm not sure if it will either, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that possibly it will.
Yeah.
Because I'm not entirely sure what's going to
Because
happen.
we had a plan with 300. We weren't over that, so I'm not sure why people were getting kicked out.
I don't know. Technology. We try our best.
Yeah.
I let the waiting room know that we would admit them in a few minutes
Okay, great.
after we close breakout rooms.
How much time do we have for breakouts?
4 minutes.
Okay.
I'll actually broadcast that to them and let them know.
Thanks. Appreciate your help with all this.
It doesn't say that we have the large meeting add-on.
Well, I think there's a difference between meetings and webinars.
Right. I'm
But
just
maybe
looking
is not going to take effect when you're right in the middle of a meeting.
I don't know. It's not showing plans. Okay, well, we can see if it goes through after this meeting, and if not, we might need to connect with Kathy and figure out what exactly she did and make sure that it.
Yeah. I think at this point, I'm not sure what else we can do.
Yeah, I just would make sure that what I'm seeing is like the same thing that she actually, the same avenue that she explored, because if not, we can try this other one. But,
Okay. All right.
all right, I'm going to actually go ahead and close the breakout rooms. So people will start coming back so that they'll be
Okay.
here on the hour, or not the hour, quarter till. Okay. Welcome back from the breakout rooms. We'll just give folks another few seconds to rejoin this large room.
All right. With apologies to anyone we cut off in mid-sentence, Bob Richter, I know you're one. Welcome back. We're only, so Dan, I think, how many groups do we actually have? And 13, 14? A lot, right? You're on mute.
Yeah, Anna
17.
assigned them. How,
17.
17?
17
groups.
groups. Okay, so we're not going to be able to have all the groups come report back, but any groups who would like to report back, please do right now.
Mike, I'll report from our group. I found it extremely enlightening from my perspective because by and large, people were speaking as educators and administrators in school situations, high school science teacher, vice principals, and a lot of, I think they were, my group was really resonating with the notion of experience and what that means, especially when it comes to education. And the kind of things that when, for example, the whole idea of naming grace was, I thought like a bridge word where you could bring in spirituality and creation care in a place where maybe you would not think of grace, the grace of creation and being in the midst of creation. So I thought our group was really, they were extremely specific about their own experience, very interested in how to foster this. One person talked about using young people and going, having kind of their little garden experience in their school, and then going to parishes and speaking about their witness to gardening and growing things. And so many of the parishioners, really older parishioners especially, really appreciated the young people sharing that kind of thing.
Thanks, Guerric.
Sure.
I can share from our group if you'd like. My name is Ted Cassidy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So at the beginning, we shared our different experiences, very fine experiences, all experiencing nature. And then we shared what we're experiencing presently. And it sort of ran the gamut. One priest is working with a diverse community and has already planned homilies on the main dynamics of Laudato Si. Another deacon lives in a parish where the priest says social justice is not really part of the gospel. Another person is from Texas, and there's pushback from the area because it's an oil and a gas area. Another person from California is in the area where water is really a problem, and there's conflict whether or not the water should be used to save the fish or plant the crops. And there's a whole culture resulting in the past from farmers wanting to use fertilizer, and the environmentalists against that, and that culture persists. So I'm at a university, and I find the students very open to the whole question and getting involved at times and interested in it. So that kind of gives a summary of what we talked about.
The group that I was with, first of all, shared how they became conscious and sensitive to climate issues. And for most of us as children, it was through our relationship with the earth, whether it was rural or urban, farm or city, national or international, beauty and growing and that sort of thing. Increased awareness through grandchildren and children, worried about their future, and love of soil, gardening, and so on. But when we talked about what are some of the obstacles, I think the group was pretty unanimous in feeling that there's a theological disconnect where a lack of awareness of the incarnational theology would allow somebody to say that there's nothing about social justice in the gospel, for example. There needs to be a lot of pre-catechesis. We've forgotten the interrelationship. We've forgotten our relationship with an indwelling God. And we still have this old notion of the God at a distance, God ex machina. So that's what we felt. There's a sense of separation needs to be overcome, at least in the process of letting people see the connection between theology, piety, and reality, world issues.
Well,
Okay, excuse me, go ahead. Oh, okay. I'm Joan Spearing. I'm reporting from Group 10. And I would say that one of the things that came up in our group that is really quite important is that even though this particular workshop is about homiletics and preaching, we might look at preaching and realize that people do not need to be ordained, etc., to preach. And that's an important consideration. And there are many avenues for preaching that we might not think about, like in the RCIA groups, in various different kinds of small communities, etc. But what came up was maybe we should definitely capitalize on the season of creation, and also perhaps add a feast for God the Creator to the other kind of theological feasts that we have in the Catholic calendar. And so one idea that came up was people can offer reflections, maybe together with the homily or at some other time during the Mass, connected to the Laudato Si themes to bring awareness.
To build on that, our group was very diverse, from DC to Des Moines, Illinois to California. And some of the main takeaways were when you're connected with student groups, to invite those students to give reflections, as you just said, and perhaps even share an eco-conversion story, so that really helps people say, prayer for the earth could get read from the pulpit in communities where there's resistance or not a lot of knowledge about how to preach it. Just a simple normalizing of prayer from the earth, for the earth, or other prayers from Laudato Si. And then also opening our ears to the language in rural communities, and maybe mimicking or echoing that language, and thinking about the importance of farms or flowers, and how we identify with the beauty of those and want to pass it on to our grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you all. I think maybe we have time for just one more. Anybody else want to?
I wouldn't care than the communities in our group were all very progressive communities, meaning a lot of justice and peace concern and a lot of social justice concerns in the community. But that sounds like good news until you realize the real call of Laudato Si is to go beyond all the little doing with social justice and realizing the need for equal conversion. That's the higher piece. Because right now, for example, the racial issues are very important. That knocks the equal justice stuff a little bit off but that's the problem if you rely just on what you do. That the call of Laudato Si really is to bring about a conversion of Christianity, to understand the depths of this deep incarnational issue that may not even show up very much in the form of Eucharist that we celebrate. They came up last year, the last time we met in Creighton, that the preaching is better implemented when our Eucharist is more evidently rooted in an equal conversion as well. So those are some of the things we talked about. And in a way, the justice and peace issues can end up being a resistance. People want to run off and do things and may not want to do the work of having to work this through at a conversion sense of preaching.
Great, thank you, Ted. I think we'll move on here. Just as a transition, Suzanne Nawrocki and I had, thanks to Dan Misleh, the opportunity to speak to some groups of priests and deacons in various parts of the country about Laudato Si. And one of the things I always said to them is, look, if this is just another issue to be heaped onto the backs of preachers to be brought into the liturgy along with Catechetical Sunday and Stewardship Sunday and this and that, I mean, if it doesn't connect with our spirituality in some way, we don't see that that's what's at stake here, it's not going to make much of a difference, I think. So, Ted, your remarks kind of reminded me of that, and I think that's terribly important. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. All right, is that coming through?
Yes, it's coming through.
Great, thank you. We will move on then to strategy. Again, broadly speaking, strategy number 2. Foster development of certain biblical themes related to creation care for preaching. So those of us who have been conversing for some months about this all agree that creation care is an integral part of the biblical witness. And I would add that that is based more broadly than just Genesis 1 and 2. As important as the creation stories themselves are, and they are obviously very important for our theme here, but care for creation, I think, is actually rooted even more broadly in the texts of the Bible. The scriptures as a whole assume that all things are interconnected. One of the earliest things, maybe the earliest thing we learned about this God who reveals God's self is that this God cares about justice, right? A terribly important theme in the context of the Bible as a whole. And what that means essentially is to be in right relationship with God, with other human beings, and with all of creation. Pursuit of justice then as right relationship opens the way for God's shalom. Shalom is of course, it's normally translated as peace, but it actually has a much richer texture to it than our word peace tends to. We tend to use peace as simply the absence of conflict or noise. God's shalom is actually a kind of social image for how the world, the cosmos would work if everyone was in right relationship as we are called to be. Human actions have consequences for the actor, but also for other members of the human community and for the rest of the earth. This is, again, integral to the scriptural witness. With the special gifts and intelligence endowed upon human beings, and the special covenantal intimacy humans are given with God, so go along with that, special responsibilities go along with that. The tradition assumes that human rebelliousness, disobedience, and greed also have negative implications for creation. Fulfilling our covenantal humanness then requires wisdom to guide our actions. It was Walter Brueggemann who helped me to see this in the context of the Hebrew Bible. The wisdom tradition takes its cue, as it were, from our role in creation. We need God's wisdom to show us how to be good covenant partners in right relationship. Some particular themes surfaced in our conversation that we think need further reflection and development. Heading the list is Genesis 1:28. Now, just to jog your memory, Genesis 1:28 says, God blessed them, saying to them, be fertile and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and all the living things that move on the earth. It's that word dominion, which I think has been largely misconstrued, at least in the modern era of Christianity. I don't see it so much in earlier centuries, but in the modern era. The creation stories teach us that all of creation belongs to God. Not only was God the creator, God continues to be the owner. And humanity is part of and united with all of creation. Yet we do have a special role, special responsibilities. The key question here is, what does dominion mean? Now, I've said in this bullet point that it should mean stewardship on behalf of the creator and responsible to the creator. Some have questioned whether stewardship is really the word we need. I can't find a better one yet. As long as we understand stewardship in this sense of being profoundly responsible to the creator, it shouldn't be an overly managerial understanding of stewardship. What's implied here is solidarity with the non-human parts of creation, as well as consideration of the needs of succeeding generations across time. That solidarity with all parts of creation, I think, is in many ways the key point here. Secondly, the sacramentality of creation. Creation as a locus of the Spirit's presence and action. I'm afraid that too often we tend to regard creation as merely a kind of dumb, inert background to God's action, rather than actually the location where God acts and moves and continues to live. Thirdly, covenant. The Bible is infused with covenantal thinking. One of the high points of the whole biblical narrative is the covenant at Mount Sinai. And it's that covenant which sets in motion, again, I'm echoing Brueggemann here, it's that covenant which sets in motion a kind of covenantal thinking, which is then later reflected in the creation stories themselves, in the Noah story, and in the David story. Covenantal thinking is ecological thinking. It speaks to the reciprocity and symbiotic interconnectedness of all parts of creation. It's a key theme in the Bible, and I think one that often gets neglected by Christian preachers. Maybe there are some reasons for that. I think the New Testament is relatively silent on this, but I don't think we should be fooled by that. I think it's presumed in the New Testament, even though the word itself doesn't come up very often. Fourthly, the Incarnation, seen, among other things, as an emphatic underlining of the doctrine of the good of creation. As someone said, in the Incarnation, it's as if God took a red pen and underlined how important it is that creation is God's and that creation is good. Fifthly, salvation, the theme of salvation or redemption, understood precisely as restoration or repair of creation. This is not injecting something into that tradition, the tradition of salvation or redemption theology. It's already there. If you read the Hebrew Bible, well, actually both Testaments, read them carefully, that notion is already there. Something went wrong with human beings and that it has affected all of creation. We can reconstrue salvation or redemption to include that, I think. And lastly, number 6, again, the need for wisdom to be good covenant partners. I dare say that I have rarely preached or heard preaching on most of these themes, or most of these themes in the way that I'm suggesting them. And one wonders why that is. Maybe there's some work for us to do. So when we turned as a working group, as a team, to some of the hows of this, here are some of the things that surfaced in our conversations. Perhaps those of us who are in the Homiletics Guild, as well as others, could build on the good work that the CCC has already done in the Sunday biblical preaching commentaries. It's very difficult, I think, to find materials which could aid one in this sort of endeavor. The CCC has provided a good basis for further development. Closely related to that, perhaps some of us again in the Guild and others could identify particular Sundays in which the lectionary readings might be suitable for preaching on one or more of these themes and highlight those, and then develop homiletic aids for preachers on those particular Sundays. I don't have a list in mind yet, but I think if we studied the lectionary, we might find certain Sundays kind of lend themselves more than others to this sort of thing. Now, I would also add as a kind of PS to that, that in some ways the lectionary doesn't always do us a favor. I'm particularly thinking about the theme of covenant. If you listen to the Bible in its own voice, what you hear is that covenant is extremely important. And yet the Sinai covenant, that great theophany, that moment of covenant making on Mount Sinai with Moses and God, only appears in the lectionary on the Feast of the Body and Blood of the Lord, Corpus Christi, Cycle B. And to me, that is in no way commensurate with how important that narrative is. So there's, anyway, plenty to think about in terms of the lectionary itself. Perhaps we could encourage people in the Guild, as well as biblical scholars, to research and construct positive, preachable approaches to some of these themes. Could we foster more work on these themes that might then aid preachers in a theologically sound way? And lastly, might we even want to encourage the bishops to develop teaching on some of these themes? Again, I don't know how to invite the bishops to do anything in particular, and I think it might be understating to say they have a lot on their minds these days, but perhaps it'd be worth discussing. Team members, want to add anything at this point?
Mike, just a thought here on the liturgical year and how covenant can surface in the context of the lectionary readings, especially in the prophetic tradition, when it comes to God wanting to renew the covenant in terms of Advent and so on. So people might have to look quite broadly, and maybe in terms of thematics, the liturgy itself could provide us some clues when it comes to the covenantal reality of these things that surface in the Bible.
Bob Bono here. I would just, I want to say that there's an abundance of reference to creation and the work of the Creator and the joyfulness of nature in the Psalms. But I think we're often so focused on the readings that they're just mixed in there. And the other thing is music that brings out the notion of creation is something that can be powerful to be inserted.
Yes, thank you both. I bet I could one hand the number of times I preached on the Psalms, Bob.
Mike, I want to also mention that I put a link into the chat for the homily helps that you referenced earlier on our website. And thanks to the Association of U.S. Catholic Priests and others for helping us to shape those.
Great, Dan, thank you. Let's move on then to our back to our groups. So this slide gives a very quick summary of the 6 themes that I just hit on. The question then for the groups would be, how can we approach preaching these biblical themes in ways that actually assist our hearers, again, assist them toward the kind of spirituality of creation that we're seeking to engender? What's been our experience? What have we done or seen that is helpful? You need not be limited to these 6 themes. If there's another one that you would like to mention, feel free. So we'll go to our groups now, and let's see, I have 1:10 at Creighton time. So let's do 15 minutes this time, and then we'll come back. Anna, if you're listening, maybe you could bring us back then at, what would that be, 1:25, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
And those of you who joined since we were last in breakouts, I'm going to need to assign you to breakouts. So just hang tight. You'll get sent to one in just a moment. You just got to do that manually.
I was in a breakout, but then had to come back. So, oh, okay, never mind.
That
I
Mary?
got in late because of capacity, so you've answered my question about groups. What are groups?
Yes, sorry about that. We fixed the capacity issue. But
Fantastic.
the inconvenience. You all should have an invitation to join a breakout room. And if you are still here, either because you are hoping to join Spanish speakers in a breakout room, or because you have another question for us here, please speak up, either in the chat or unmute yourself. And welcome, Brady. I don't think you can hear me yet. Welcome, Brady. We just went to breakout room, so I'm just going to send you to one and you'll be right there with everyone else who just got started.
Nope, sorry, that's me. I'm just coming in to check.
That's Andaleo. Yep, okay. Okay, so I'll say again, if you are still here in this room and you either are hoping to have a Spanish speaking conversation for breakouts or have another question about breakouts for us, please go ahead and unmute and ask, or put it in the chat, and otherwise we'll probably start talking shop. Lourdes, welcome. I'm going to invite you to join a breakout session. They just started. If you are confused and have questions, then feel free to stay back and ask them instead of joining immediately. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions come in through the chat and no one's unmuting, so please do feel free to interrupt us as we're talking shop if you need anything. And I'm just going to assign breakout room here. And at this point, I think with this person who's in the waiting room now, yeah, I think maybe after this, we should hold off on admitting new people into the breakouts just because they're.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I don't have anything though.
So that we've resolved the capacity issue.
Yeah, we were at like 110 or 115, so
yeah,
it did take
right.
immediate effect. She just did it in a different way than what I was looking at. So
okay.
I was looking at a large meeting add-on that would have boosted us up to 500, and I think she did something else that has essentially the same impact.
Great.
Dan, can you hold down this space for just a moment? I'll
Yep.
be right back in case
Yep,
anybody has
of
a
course.
question. Yeah. Dan, are you seeing this notification that someone in room 1 is asking for help, or is that just coming to me?
I think it's just coming to you. I don't see that.
Okay, I'm going to click join breakout room
Yep.
to see. So you'll
See what's
hang
going
on.
on.
I'll be back. I'm just gonna let you know that I'm gonna go ahead and close the room, Stan.
Okay.
I think all my windows. Sorry, I had all these things organized and then here we go, close all rooms.
You're admitting people who are in the waiting room.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm just waiting on those breakout rooms that want to soak up every second together, and we'll get started here in about 30 seconds.
Dan Misleh, let me say we thank you for giving AUSCP a plug.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do it.
Way to go, Bob.
Yeah, if we can get, Michael Agliardo is still, he's been part of our group here, but I think all those ideas of getting more priests engaged with the whole concept, I think we need to push that a bit more, and I'm delighted with the ideas that have come up from this this particular session.
Yeah, I agree.
Was the full name of the group the U.S. Association of Catholic Bishops for Climate Change? What was the?
No. The Association of U.S. Catholic Priests, Rose. AUSCP. I'll put a link to the website in the chat. Give me a minute.
Welcome back again, everyone. Let's hear a few reports from groups.
Group 9 talked about the need to preach incarnation boldly and have strong pastoral leadership from the bishops following Francis's lead. There's a sense that even the preachers aren't committed to incarnational preaching. And we talked about opportunities for doing that specifically, like World Day of Prayer, September 1st, World Day of Prayer for the Career of Creation, St. Francis's feast day, and so on. We talked about how instrumental music is, and the pun was intended, and celebrating God as creator, especially in wisdom readings, and trying to influence, if we can, that this upcoming letter from the bishops on the Eucharist address the issue of the sacramentality of creation. If there's a sacrament in which that can be done, that's it. There might be some skepticism as to whether or not that's the direction in which they intend to go, but perhaps we can influence them in doing so.
Group 11 had some very interesting ideas. They loved your 6 points in terms of the themes that you were talking about. And we talked on and off about almost all of them, even given the time. One of the things I thought was a very helpful, very concrete suggestion was a survey to the parish in terms of taking their temperature on their relationship with creation, and maybe also having an age range for the feedback to find out what the demographic is in terms of the kinds of folks that are responding in this world. One of the observations also was, of course, that this is, given even the themes as good as they are, all of them can in some way engender a political lightning rod because of the way in which certain language and so on, people construe this or that. And, people who are dealing with nature, those are all the liberal parts of the church, and we don't really want to get into that. But at the same time, when you talk about sacramentality, how can you talk about sacramentality in the context of Eucharist when you're not talking about the whole earth as a sacrament, the whole earth as being made holy by and praising the one who has made it so.
Group 6 talked about music and petitions, the importance of that. Also the importance of locating Laudato Si in the consistent teaching of the church. To situate the document as a document that speaks about the profound significance of relationship. You know, that we are in relationship with God, with creation, with other creatures. We also talked about the importance of preaching the fullness of Scripture, to preach on the readings of the Old Testament and the Psalms. The Psalms are so rich with images, and it's those images that make preaching come alive. And also the importance of preaching about themes of the common good. So much of the preaching that we hear is preaching on personal holiness. And so to recapture that theme of the importance of the common good. And we also talked about seminary formation, kind of emphasizing themes in moral theology and personal holiness, and kind of de-emphasizing issues in ecumenism and social justice. And so that has an impact on the preaching coming out of seminarians as well.
Thank you.
In group 13, we had a broad-ranging discussion, some highlights, around the theme of covenant, to look towards the Native American traditions, really look at 7 generations, meaning living within the 3 generations behind you and the 3 generations ahead of you. As talked about, this idea of, sacramentality is really important. Of, everything is a gift from God, and how do we honor this? We talked a lot about, how do we change people's minds? One comment was that the hope that one of the benefits of the pandemic shows to everybody is that we're truly interconnected, and the interconnectedness of everything, both within people and planet. And the observation that most clergy don't have children. And so it's harder for them to imagine this issue for future generations compared to parishioners who are parents and youth. And it was emphasized that as much as possible, to really drive some change, we'd like to hear about Laudato Si and creation care from the pulpit. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other groups want to report?
We had a good discussion in group 2 covering covenant, sacramentality, incarnation, but it was a Jesuit in our group, and we said we look forward to the day when a very creative Jesuit can take the spiritual exercises and begin turning them towards Laudato Si in a very useful way, because it could be a one-day hit and miss, but if the spiritual exercises are an example, it can carry you through every day in prayer and in the way you approach it. But a good Jesuit might say, well, it already does that, but not clearly to us, though. So just a recommendation.
Just a comment, this is Bob Bono. Louis Savary, S-A-V-A-R-Y, I'm not sure if it's Savary or Savary. He's a former Jesuit, and he has written a whole a book on the exercises of St. Ignatius a la Teilhard de Chardin.
Right, I've seen that. That's good.
Yeah, so it's a good resource.
Right.
I would add one theme that I'm looking at the themes here that I think could also tie together, and that's the cry of the poor, and how climate change and the climate crisis is impacting the poor. That's a theme that I think most pastors could probably latch on to quite easily.
Well, folks, thank you to all those who reported in, and let me again invite the secretaries of all 17 groups to toss me an email one of these days with just some quick summary of your discussions. and we'll see what we can learn from that. We wanted to leave a few minutes at the end. Our time is coming to a close here, but we wanted to leave a few minutes here at the end. I wanted to flag one larger issue that also came up in our discussion, but didn't really fit into any of the categories. We all noted, this is the team members that have been meeting since January, that there's very, very little written on the wider question of preaching and Catholic social teaching. So as you probably know, creation care is one of the, what are there, seven basic principles. Where's Dan when I need him? I believe it's 7 principles of Catholic social teaching. It is almost impossible to find anything that brings these two together, preaching and CST. If I ever have time, I'd like to start doing something about that. But there does seem to be, in other words, this is to situate our issue today in a larger issue, what seems to me a larger issue of neglect. Let me mention again that list of resources I'm putting together. If you would like to email me something for inclusion or consideration for that list, please do so. Let me then finally just open the floor to anyone who wants to add a final comment, perhaps an additional theme, an idea, a practical approach, something that you have seen that is so exciting that you think the rest of us should know about this as we seek to bring these two things together, preaching and creation care. You'll have to unmute yourself.
My impression is that it's hard to get our pastors, who are busier than heck and becoming more busy all the time, to focus on Laudato Si and preaching the environment and creation. A couple of years ago, I tried to get our parish to accept the idea of solar arrays on the roof of the church and the school, which would have saved a considerable amount of money. And I've heard of a parish that saved some $6,000 a year by putting LED lights in. And this would, of course, start with a presentation to the Treasury Committee, and thereby perhaps get one's foot in the door with this practical consideration to move toward a theological and informational approach to dealing with creation and environmental degradation.
Thank you, Henry. I see 3 people who have raised their hand. Gina Orlando, you're first.
Yeah, one of the themes that seems to have been missed is that of love. And how do we help support people falling back in love with creation, with nature, and feeling connected to it? Because when we love something, we protect it.
Thank you. Don Parda.
I'm preparing a 5-minute presentation for after communion on carbon footprint, and my only tie there to Catholicism is I lead off by saying, hey, Pope Francis gave us 282 pages of Laudato Si. It's obviously very important to the leader of Catholicism. And beyond that, I then just launch into what I think is really underpromoted. Consumer has to reduce his carbon footprint or we're not going to get there.
Thank you. Mary Jo Stein.
In our group, we talked about how the church is the people. And as Henry said, the priests are, they have a million things to think about, but the church as the people, we're all invited to get involved in all this. And one of our group members is in this Laudato Si circle in his parish, and it went to Zoom because of the pandemic, and the participation increased like 4 or 5 times what they started out with. So us in our individual parishes, if we can say, you know, we want to be part of a Laudato Si circle and just invite those who can participate, that's another concrete way of kind of living out our call, our baptismal call to preach and to live the word and live our faith and preach by our actions and not just by our words. Thanks.
Thank you. Susan Ceziel, I believe you were the next hand I saw.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to emphasize that the upcoming season of creation running from September 1st to October 3rd is a wonderful gift from Pope Francis that is a period where we as the worldwide church can focus on creation care. And it's a wonderful opportunity to include that in our liturgy and homilies, prayers for the faithful, perhaps a prayer we can all say together at Mass, at the end of the Mass. And maybe we could help our pastors if we had maybe a 2-page cheat sheet on a number of themes, maybe the top 10 themes from Laudato Si that they could try to weave into their homilies. But, you know, how can we make it easy for our pastors? How can we give them helps? And I know there are resources on the Catholic Climate Covenant website for homilies, but, you know, how can we make it easy? Just give them, you know, 10 or so good themes, scripture related, that they could include in those homilies.
Thank you. Rose Schneider.
Just real quick, our Care for Creation team did a mission statement that we would be doing prayer, advocacy, and actions. And we got early on about solar panels. And I think it was too far a leap for our pastor. And I'm wondering if when we go back again with a new pastor, we would try to get them to do prayer and have it every week something about the prayer, because it seems like it would kick them into, okay, if we're going to pray about it, then what actions do we have to do after prayer? Because we tried solar panels. We had a great plan for solar panels, but it was too much of a leap for our pastor because he wasn't even talking about it in the sermons or in anything. So I think next time we're going to try to emphasize more the prayer part at first and see if it somehow makes them more amenable to actions after that. We're not sure, but we'll try it.
Thank you. Doug Demio.
Hi. It's so important that we see that multimedia approaches to care for creation and environmental justice extend way beyond just preaching at the pulpit, whether you're a priest or not a priest. In our group, a few people mentioned like liturgical dance, theater, and I share poetry, spoken Laudato Si and spoken word, and I'd like to share one short piece called King Cole, just to give you a little bit of a taste. Great-grandfather stricken black lung disease, tunnels today, paltry accident feeds. No different feeling, fester labor's rage. Once races pitted, mask enemy stage. Mega dynamite and monster machines, now turn miners against land-loving greens. King Cole lobbies for sale some White House. Humans choke in bone-gutted funhouse. Capital fiend smirks at the sight. He headlong range mountains for anthracite. Forgotten striker holds to bloody end. Incoming bomb show what King Cole will spend. To destroy the miners' will to battle. Scrapped in script, broken, treated like cattle. But are we to quit in history's wake and bequeath God's grandeur a ghastly fake? What an unforgivable price to pay. Idly give massy energy the day. No, we must carry our ancestors' torch. March head on to industry Titan's porch. Demand what both miner and mountain share. Union. Full justice now. Full justice there.
Thank you, Doug. Bob Bono, and I think you will be the last because we need to wind up here.
Just a quick thought, we referenced retreats for priests around the Laudato Si and Care for Creation theme. I think a lot of parishes like to have a sometimes Advent, sometimes Lent, more frequently Lent, a retreat for the people of the parish. And I think properly put together and promoted, just as that those webinars by a parish drew a big audience, that might be a really good way to get it into parishes.
Thank you, Bob. And thank you all. We're at the end of our time. I believe Dan Misleh wants a minute or two, but let me just again thank you. And I want to in particular thank the members of my team for donating all those hours over the last few months to our conversations. So thank you all, and God bless you all today. Thanks for being here. Dan.
Great. Yeah, and let me add my thanks as well. Thank you, Mike, especially for agreeing to, or saying yes and agreeing to do this. It's been a wonderful conversation. I've learned quite a bit myself. A couple of things just to know that this has been recorded, so we will have that available to you probably next week, because I imagine there'll be a little bit of editing that we'll need to do with it before we send it out. If you have social media accounts and you want to send this out, use the hashtag LSUS21, Laudato Si in the US 21, but just use LSUS21. We have workshops coming up in about an hour and 15 minutes, I believe. Well, at 4 o'clock Central, so whatever time zone that is for you. I don't count on me for times. We have communications and media, are the concurrent workshops are communications and media and youth and young adults. So those will start at 4 Central time. And then at 6 Central time tonight, we have a bunch of great announcements. We'll talk a little bit about how the Laudato Si action platform, the Vatican's initiative, will work. We have a new website to unveil at that time. We also want to share with you a small grants program that may be helpful to your parishes and other institutions that want to start some creation care activities. We'll have an announcement about that, and we'll see you later on this afternoon. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.